All right, hey guys. So I wanted to make a video for you that has a few purposes behind it. The main one being how do you go about doing some research, right, and getting some primary and secondary articles that are of high quality, and what does this type of research look like? So I wanted to send that out for you, and I also wanted to show a few things that you might have missed on the AP Seminar Google page here. So the first thing that I'd like to show you is if you go to just classwork, right? There's a few things I'm going to point out before I get into this research. First is the 1 minute rant, right? It's right up here. So what I've got for you guys is just a constant update of what we're expecting, right? So like last week, you want to come to class prepared, ready to go. With your slide deck, right? So if what we're asking for is that you add a slide, make sure that you check out this document and you click on it and you go ahead and you add where you need to add, right? So for this next week, what we're asking for is this here. This is for next Friday, so this is for the 22nd of this week. So take a look at this, and if you have any questions, come find me. And that's right up here at the top. Now we're in Unit 3 in Genetic Engineering, but what I'd like to actually point out to you are some of the resources that are down here. So one of the things I put up is that presentation Zen is up there for you guys under presentations. There's all sorts of resources down here. Ms. Stulock last Tuesday went over a paper with you guys. I took notes on that while she was talking. I put them there. So that's all there for you guys. But what I wanted to have you look at is right here under important documents, a few things that I uploaded. The first thing that I'd like to open up and talk to you about is this thing called research tips. So this is just as I was going through and thinking about you guys coming up with research questions, and then also starting to really dive in and get these primary and secondary articles. Like, what's the process that I would generally go about in order to do that successfully? And I got a list of 3 common mistakes I think that people make as they're going through and they're doing research. So the first one is undervaluing curiosity and some serendipity. I've said this before with your research questions, that they need to be malleable, they need to be plastic, they need to change over time depending on the research that you do. The only way that you can really understand that is by doing research and actually going through the process, right, to learn that lesson. I can say it until I'm blue in the face, but until you learn the value of it and you actually kind of dive in and you do it on your own, I'm just kind of going to be given lip service, right? So hopefully you guys have started that process, right? And you're starting to see that as you uncover sources and you start to do some research, your thoughts might change a little bit, and that's great. And it just needs to be reflected in your perspective and in your research question. So I'm just providing with an example down here, right? Let's say that you start looking into ethics of gene editing, and then you learn through research on India and their ethics. For perspective, you find a paper discussing that World War II countries may be against gene editing more strongly than non-World War II nations, for reasons that I would be happy to discuss with you of perhaps why that might be. Now, your lens might shift from maybe a scientific view to more of a historical perspective, just based off of accidentally sort of running into that article and doing some reading. There's really no shortcut to being good at research and being good at writing than doing a lot of reading and doing a lot of writing. There's no shortcut to it. So spending time with research, even when we're not assigning it, is an incredibly important thing. And then allowing your research to adjust depending on the type of stuff that you're finding is incredibly important. It's not lazy, that's professional. That's the way you go about doing it. Another thing that I would say is do less thinking, more searching. If you're just getting paralyzed by thinking of the perfect search terms to get the exact perfect paper that you're going to use for your evidence, you're going to go slow and you're going to get paralyzed and you're going to stop. Stop trying to think of the perfect search. Just get started. Just type some things in. When you see something that catches your eye, read it. It doesn't mean you have to read a whole article or that you have to download every article that you see. But when you find something interesting or something that you feel like might help you form a question, click on it. Read it. You have to read quite a bit in order for these things to be really good. You got to put some work into it. And then the last thing is don't settle. Be better than Google. Google gives you an amazing a bit of access to information, right? But also with that, you're getting some really low quality writing and some low quality opinions that aren't very credible. But you're also going to get some things that are really good. So Google, you really should think about using Google when you're doing your research projects as more of a place for inspiration and getting started than as your main search engine for coming up with primary and secondary articles that are really going to help you support an argument. The likelihood that many of the things you run across on an initial search on the internet, they're going to be sources that are not consistently credible. So you want to go to a place that is going to give you consistently credible sources, right? Hence, something like EBSCO, which we're having you practice. So the assignment that we gave you guys was to help you practice a little bit adopting a perspective and forming an argument through an annotated bibliography. And we were asking for 2 different sources, high quality sources, right? So right down here, what we have is this a research guide, and what I've put down on this document for you is a bunch of links. There's other resources down here, right, which are sort of different places that you can search for primary and secondary articles. The main one, and where I'd really like you to spend some time, is with EBSCO. So if you click right up here up top, there's a link to EBSCO. You guys all have access to EBSCO through taking AP Capstone. So you see here's the homepage for EBSCO. And I'll sort of do like a quick example here with you guys so you can get an understanding of maybe what this should look like or how it can look. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm actually going to just go to Google here, right? And let's say that I just start on Google, right? I want to get some inspiration. I want to find like, well, what's out there? And specifically with your annotated bibliography that you're working on for Tuesday, it's due Tuesday, tomorrow. What you're working on is trying to understand the perspective of a certain country and how that culture might impact their perspective on gene editing in human embryos, right? So the first thing that I'm probably going to search is, let's say that in my group of 5, I happen to adopt the perspective of Russia. So I'm gonna have Russian policy. Well, I might search for Russian policy and gene editing, right? So you can see that when I search this, I'm going to get some hits here. One's from Nature, which is a pretty good source. A Russian biologist plans more CRISPR-edited babies. Embattled Russian scientist sharpens plans to create yada, yada, yada. Looks like a guy named Denis Rebrakov. And then I actually ended up clicking on this one. This is, you can see just from early October. When you click on this, you're going to get something from Singularity Hub, and we could probably like look that up and see exactly who Ed Gent is and the source quality of something like Singularity Hub, or we could go to some place that has a little bit higher quality sourcing, and we could use something like EBSCO. So if you read through, you can even like listen to this article if you really wanted to. What you can go do is just kind of like skim, right? Does this sound like something that you'd want to invest in a little bit? So if I'm reading about this guy, it took less than a year for Russian scientist Denis Rebrakov to announce his desire to carry out similar experiments that edit germline DNA. I might click on some of these links and see what this guy is really up to. But just for the sake of brevity here, I'm going to go ahead and just like highlight this guy's name and show you maybe like what I would do in EBSCO, right? So I would go over back to EBSCO. I've got his name. I'm actually going to go to advanced search instead of just a basic search, because I want to include some more terms, because I want to narrow this down a little bit. So I'm going to ask for EBSCO to find me some really good articles, high quality articles on Denis Rebrakov, and then I'm also going to type in, let's say, and gene editing. Right, so now what this is going to do by hitting and, it's only going to pull up articles that have this name and gene editing in it. And since that's kind of what I want to narrow down the search a little bit. So I might go from hundreds of results to a few results, right? So now what I'm going to go do is click search, and I've got a total of 2 results. One's called Crossing the Line, and it is an academic journal. And it's from the journal Science, which is a great source. And then we've got Parents Weigh Promise and Risk of Germline Editing, also from Science. This one's from 2019, as is this one. So I'm going to go ahead and just click on the PDF. You open up the PDF, and you guys can do several things from here. You could download it, maybe. Yeah, so we want to click on PDF right here. There it is. right? So this is going to get pulled up from the actual journal itself, and it's just in PDF form. And you could do a few things. You could hit download here and actually save it to your desktop. You could print it if you wanted to, or you could kind of go over here and you can actually click on Google Drive and you could send this directly to your Google Drive. It's kind of up to you, but if you read through this, and science is a great resource for this, these types of articles, you could use this, and you might use this then as evidence, and you might put it in your annotated bibliography in order to support your stance that you're taking on whether or not you think Russia is legitimately going to be one of those countries that consistently uses gene editing technologies in human embryos, right? So this is going to be better than where you started over here with Google. This is a higher quality source. It would score better on the Raven, right? So you want to use credible sources when you're trying to make an argument. So that's just an example, guys, of how you would use something like EBSCO in order to pull up primary, secondary articles that are going to be of higher quality than what you would normally get on something like Google. So hopefully that is helpful.